My name is Victor, and if you are also over 60, if you have spent the better part of your adult life working and saving so that you could arrive at this chapter with genuine security, I need to share something with you today that challenges one of the most deeply held beliefs of our entire generation. Not because I want to be provocative, but because the evidence is clear, the pattern is consistent, and what I am about to walk you through will, if you take it seriously, change the way you think about your financial situation for the rest of your life. The paid-off house. For most people in our generation, those 4 words are not simply a financial milestone. They are something closer to a life mission. Decades of mortgage payments, decades of discipline, decades of telling yourself that one day this would all be yours, free and clear. And when that day finally arrives, when you make that final payment and the title is entirely in your name, it feels like victory. It feels like proof that every sacrifice was worth it. I am here to tell you that feeling is deceiving you, and the cost of that deception, for millions of people in our position right now, is being paid in ways that are quiet, invisible, and deeply damaging to the security they believe they have built. Let me be precise. I am not telling you the house is worthless. What I am telling you is that the way most people over 60 think about their paid-off home is costing them more than they will ever fully calculate. And in many cases, it is quietly undermining the exact security they thought they were securing. There is a concept in financial thinking called liquidity. It refers to how quickly and how easily you can convert an asset into usable cash without losing significant value in the process. A savings account is highly liquid. A portfolio of publicly traded securities is relatively liquid. Real estate, and in particular your primary residence, is among the most illiquid assets that exist in the modern economy. And the reason this matters so much in retirement is that the entire nature of your financial situation changes the moment you stop receiving a regular income. When you were 45 or 50, illiquidity was a manageable inconvenience. You had income coming in, you had decades ahead. If an emergency arose or an unexpected cost materialized, you had time to recover and other resources to draw on. But retirement changes that equation completely. You are no longer a person who earns and saves. You are a person who lives off what has already been accumulated. And when the majority of what you have accumulated is locked inside a single illiquid asset that generates no income whatsoever, you have constructed a situation that is far more fragile than it appears on the surface. Consider this number carefully. Research from the Federal Reserve indicates that for Americans over the age of 65, in many households, over 80% of total financial assets are concentrated in the primary residence. Over 80%. That means that for the majority of retirees, if you stripped away the home, there is almost nothing left in liquid form. These are people who feel financially secure, people who followed every piece of conventional advice, people who did exactly what they were told. And they are, in practical financial terms, one significant expense away from a serious crisis. Think about what a significant expense looks like after 60. A medical event, a major home repair, a sustained period of inflation that pushes monthly costs beyond what fixed income sources can absorb. These are not theoretical scenarios. These are the realities of aging. And none of them care how paid off your mortgage is. A paid-off house does not pay your grocery bills. It does not cover your insurance premiums. It does not fund your medications or your freedom to make meaningful choices. It sits there, costing you money every single month in property taxes, homeowners insurance, maintenance, repairs, and utilities. For a significant number of people I have observed, the annual carrying cost of owning a home outright runs between $15,000 and $30,000 before a single emergency repair is added. The house generates nothing. The house demands something every month. That is not what most people mean when they use the word security. I want to pause here, because what I am about to say is something that many of you have been asking me about directly for a very long time. Before I continue with the full analysis of this topic, I need to address it. Over the past several months, I have received more messages than I can adequately count from people who are in exactly this position. People who are over 60, who have done everything right by the standards they were raised with, who have the paid-off home, the modest savings account, the Social Security or pension check, and who feel, at a level they sometimes struggle to articulate, that something in their financial picture is not as solid as they expected it to be. They sense an unease that the conventional story about retirement does not explain. They feel that the plan they followed their entire working life is leaving them with less flexibility, less freedom, and more financial anxiety than they ever anticipated. And they have been asking me, consistently and sincerely, for the real answer. Not the simplified version. Not the general reassurances that everything will be fine. The actual mechanics of how to build and preserve real financial security after 60. What they are asking is this: how do you take the assets you have accumulated, often concentrated in illiquid form, and convert them into a structure that actually generates income, protects purchasing power, remains flexible enough to handle what life brings, and leaves behind a clean and meaningful legacy? How do you close the gap between the retirement you imagined and the retirement you are actually living? Because of those requests, because of the volume of them and the genuine urgency behind them, I put together something I have never made publicly available before. A complete manual. A comprehensive, practical, step-by-step guide built specifically for people who are 60 and above, and who want to understand the real frameworks for wealth accumulation and preservation at this stage of life. Not a brief overview, not a surface-level summary of concepts you have already encountered. A full resource that goes into the actual mechanics of the decisions that matter most right now. It covers everything I am raising in this conversation, and it goes significantly deeper. It covers the real numbers behind housing decisions in retirement, and how to evaluate your specific situation without letting emotion cloud the math. It covers the income generation strategies that most people in our age group have never seriously explored, strategies that work specifically for the financial profile of someone between 60 and 75. It covers the tax positioning decisions that most financial advisors will not raise unless you ask exactly the right questions, because those questions reveal gaps in planning that reflect poorly on the advice you were given. It covers the frameworks for thinking about your assets in a fundamentally different way than most of us were ever taught. And it covers the estate structuring approaches that protect what you intend to pass on, rather than surrendering a significant portion of it to administrative costs, legal delays, and the friction that comes from concentrating everything in real estate. This is not a theoretical document written by someone observing from a distance. It is a practical guide built from real patterns, real decisions, and real outcomes that I have watched unfold across decades of witnessing how people at exactly this life stage either protect their financial security or gradually and painfully lose it. And it exists, specifically and entirely, because people like you asked for it. The requests were clear, they were consistent, and they deserved a serious and complete response. That response is waiting for you right now. The first link in the description below this video will take you directly to it. If you are serious about what we are discussing here, if you are someone who does not want to simply feel secure but actually wants to be secure on a foundation that can withstand what is coming, I would encourage you to go there when this conversation is over. It is the most complete resource I have made available outside of a private consultation. It was built for the people who asked for it, and you are one of them. Go there, read it with care, take what applies to your situation, and act on it. Now let us return to what I was explaining, because there is considerably more you need to understand. The second major error people make when thinking about their paid-off home in retirement is what I call opportunity cost blindness. It is a concept that even financially sophisticated people tend to underestimate because it involves money that is invisible rather than money that is visibly leaving your account. Here is the arithmetic. Suppose your home is worth $500,000 and you own it entirely. That $500,000 is your equity. It is your capital. It is sitting inside the walls of that house, not working, not compounding, not generating any return. And every year it remains there, you are forfeiting whatever that capital could have produced if it had been deployed with intention. $500,000 placed into a conservatively structured income-generating portfolio, a thoughtfully balanced combination of dividend-paying equities, short-duration bonds, and income-oriented real estate investment trusts, at a modest 5% annual return, produces $25,000 per year. That is over $2,000 per month. Not from speculation, not from taking significant risk, simply from acknowledging that your capital has a cost when it is immobilized and choosing to deploy it intelligently instead of leaving it inert. I am not arguing everyone should sell their home. My point is more precise. Most people over 60 have never honestly calculated what their home equity is costing them in terms of the income it is not generating. They have never compared that number to the real cost of renting comparable housing in their area. When you run those numbers with clarity rather than sentiment, the answer is frequently uncomfortable. For a significant number of retirees, downsizing is not a compromise. It is the financially rational decision, the move that would meaningfully increase monthly cash flow, reduce carrying costs, and strengthen long-term security. And yet people resist it, not for financial reasons, but for emotional ones. I understand that resistance. The feelings attached to a long-held home are real. They are simply not entries on a balance sheet. Part of building genuine security after 60 requires learning to hold both things at once: the emotional truth of what a place means, and the financial truth of what keeping it actually costs. There is a third dimension to this problem that receives almost no serious attention, and it has become significantly more relevant in recent years. It is the relationship between illiquid assets and sustained inflation. Those of us who lived through the price environment of recent years felt something real. Groceries up 30%, homeowners' insurance premiums rising 40% or more in certain states within a single year. Healthcare costs moving in a direction that was alarming for anyone on a fixed income. That was not an anomaly. It was a demonstration of a structural reality that has been present in modern economies for decades. Inflation is not a historical curiosity. It is an ongoing force. And for people whose income does not rise with prices, it functions as a slow and relentless erosion of everything they have built. Your paid-off house does not protect you from inflation. Every carrying cost associated with that home is inflation-sensitive. Property taxes, insurance, maintenance, repairs, all rise when inflation rises. The income you derive from the house remains exactly zero, regardless of what the Consumer Price Index does. An asset whose costs are expanding and whose returns are non-existent is not a foundation. It is a drain. Contrast that with a properly constructed investment portfolio that holds assets designed for exactly this environment. Treasury inflation-protected securities engineered to maintain real purchasing power as prices rise. Real estate investment trusts that pass rising rental income through to investors as increasing distributions. Equities in sectors that historically benefit from inflationary conditions, including energy, essential consumer goods, and infrastructure. None of these are perfect instruments. Nothing in finance is perfect. But they respond to inflation in a way that your paid-off home fundamentally cannot. The fourth dimension concerns estate planning and legacy, and I know this matters deeply to people in our generation, because the goal was never only personal comfort. The goal was to build something that would outlast us, to leave a mark beyond our own years. Here is what most people do not want to examine honestly. Real estate is among the most complicated and costly assets to transfer at death. Probate delays, title complications, property taxes reassessed under new ownership rules in certain states, disagreements among heirs about whether to sell, retain, or develop the property. These are not rare exceptions. They are the standard experience. I have watched families who believed they were receiving a meaningful inheritance discover instead that they had been handed a legal process that consumed years of their time and tens of thousands of dollars in administrative costs. Compare that to a properly structured financial portfolio with clearly designated beneficiaries on every account. That transfer takes days. It bypasses probate entirely. It preserves nearly the full value you intended to convey. The difference in real value that actually reaches the people you intended to benefit is enormous. None of what I have said today is an argument against owning a home. It is an argument against allowing one illiquid, non-income generating, inflation-sensitive asset to function as the centerpiece of a retirement strategy in an era that demands far more sophistication than the one that strategy was designed for. We are living in a time when retirements extend 25, sometimes 30 years beyond the final day of work, when healthcare costs can consume substantial fractions of accumulated savings, when inflation is a present concern rather than an abstract theory. This is the environment we are actually navigating. It demands honest math and the willingness to let go of inherited assumptions that no longer reflect reality. The right approach does not look the same for everyone. For some, it means downsizing strategically, freeing up substantial equity to be repositioned into income-generating instruments while reducing carrying costs. For others, it means a properly structured reverse mortgage, a federally regulated tool that has been substantially reformed and now allows people to convert home equity into usable income while staying in the home. For others still, it means a more modest rebalancing, redirecting savings from low-yield instruments into better-positioned assets while developing a longer-term plan for the real estate. The specific answer matters less than the process of arriving at it honestly, and that process begins with releasing the comfortable myth that owning your home free and clear is equivalent to being financially secure. It is not. It is one component of a picture that requires far more components than most people have been encouraged to build. The generation that shaped our values taught us that the goal was to own things. Own your home. Own your land. Own your assets without debt. That teaching came from lived experience of genuine hardship and real memory of loss. The instinct behind it was understandable. But we are now at a stage of life where the question is no longer how to acquire. The question is how to generate. How to convert a lifetime of acquisition into a structure that produces income, preserves purchasing power, and transfers cleanly to the people who matter most. That is a different problem than the one our parents were solving. It requires different tools. The paid-off house is not the mistake in isolation. The mistake is treating it as the conclusion of financial strategy rather than as one asset among many that deserves clear, unsentimental evaluation in the context of everything you still have ahead of you. Before I leave you, I want to return once more to what I described earlier. The complete manual I mentioned, the full practical guide for building and protecting real wealth after 60, covers the liquidity management framework specific to retirement, the tax positioning strategies for our age range, the income generation approaches designed for the 60 to 75 window, and the estate structuring decisions that preserve what you intend to leave behind, rather than surrendering it to process and delay. If what I said today resonated, if you recognized your own situation in what I described, if you have felt that quiet unease about the solidity of your financial foundation that conventional retirement advice never quite explains, then what is inside that manual is exactly where this conversation should continue. The first link in the description below takes you directly to it. You asked for it. It was built for you. After everything you have worked for, you deserve the real answers. They are there, right now, waiting for you.